Good afternoon. Today we're going to get into the 20th chapter of the Gospel according to Luke on our Advent journey. In this chapter, Jesus has arrived in Jerusalem and he's teaching in the temple, and we begin to see more and more antagonism between him and the leaders, the Pharisees and the other temple leaders, and ultimately with the Romans in a few chapters. The first story is a story of them questioning him about the authority by which he teaches, and he questions them about what authority John the Baptizer, spoke with. And they said, well, if we say it came from heaven, then he'll say, well, why did you not believe him? But if we say, of course, it was of human origin, all the people will stone us, for they're convinced that John was a prophet. So they answered that they did not know where it came from. So Jesus said, well, if you can't figure that one out, I'm not going to tell you where my authority comes from. Basically, we get an outline of the thought process of the leadership. They weren't really worried about the truth or what was right. They were worried about maintaining their power, if we notice from what they said. But they said, because if we say it was from heaven, that John's authority was from heaven, they'll say, well, why didn't you believe him? And why didn't you do what he said? And why didn't you follow him? But if we say it's of human origin, that it wasn't valid, ostensibly, then all the people will be upset and they'll stone us. So they're more worried about staying in power than they're worried about getting an answer to that question right. And so Jesus isn't interested in that because according to Jesus, as Jesus has been teaching throughout the book of Luke, God is the ultimate power and the only real power. The rest of the stories in the chapter are very similar to that. And Jesus goes up against the Sadducees, which is another political party in the Jewish leadership, and to the same deal. Whenever we're reading these chapters, we have to think about power dynamics. And Jesus speaking truth, whereas those in power speaking with a royal consciousness, a limited way of thinking that can only be thinking about how to maintain power. And ultimately, there's an indictment at the end of the chapter, beginning in verse 45. It says, in the hearing of all the people, he said to the disciples, beware the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for the sake of appearances say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. So the beginning of the book, he takes on the chapter, he takes on the Pharisees. In the middle of the chapter, he takes on the Sadducees. At the end, he's ticking off and indicting the scribes. Jesus is a full-service criticizer of the powers that be. And like I said, as we go forward, we will see him also antagonize Rome, which will lead to his crucifixion. But his defeat of Rome will come in his resurrection. So we'll get into those themes and more as we move forward. Tomorrow we'll get into the 21st chapter. I hope you have a gracious day, and I look forward to talking to you soon.